It was just another routine day at the Las Vegas Police Department. Officers were buried in paperwork, answering calls, and processing arrests. The steady hum of conversation mixed with the occasional crackle of the radio filled the air. But then, suddenly, the glass doors at the entrance swung open, and silence fell over the room. A tall, well-dressed figure strode inside, his steps steady and deliberate. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, had just walked into the station. Gasps rippled across the room. Officers exchanged bewildered glances. Was this really happening? There were no Secret Service agents in sight, making the situation even more surreal. Sergeant Mike Carson, a seasoned officer with over 2 decades on the force, instinctively straightened his stance. His gut told him something unusual was unfolding. What was the leader of the free world doing here? Whispers spread like wildfire. Some officers instinctively adjusted their uniforms, while others just stood frozen, staring in disbelief. No one had received any notification of a presidential visit. Was this a security drill? A mistake? Finally, Sergeant Carson stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. President, sir, is there something we can do for you?" His tone was respectful, but laced with curiosity. Trump's gaze swept across the precinct, as if he were searching for something or someone. Then, in his unmistakable, direct manner, he spoke. "I need to see your chief of police. Immediately." Mike hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Right this way, sir." As he gestured for Trump to follow, every officer in the room remained frozen, their eyes locked on the most powerful man in the country. Inside her office, Chief Angela Ruiz was busy reviewing reports from the night before. A no-nonsense leader, respected by her team, she thought she had seen it all. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. A firm knock at the door was followed by Sergeant Carson's voice. "Chief, we have an unexpected guest." Before she could respond, the door swung open, and in walked Donald Trump. Ruiz's jaw tightened. "Mr. President." She immediately stood, extending her hand. "This is an honor, sir. What brings you to our department?" Trump shook her hand but wasted no time. "I need your help with something personal." Ruiz arched an eyebrow. "Personal?" This wasn't the official visit she had expected. Trump reached into the inner pocket of his suit, pulling out a small, worn photograph. The edges were curled, the colors faded with time. He placed it gently on her desk. Ruiz glanced down at the image, a young boy standing beside a uniformed police officer. The officer looked proud, his hand resting protectively on the boy's shoulder. Her brow furrowed. "Who is this?" Trump's voice softened. "That boy is me. And that officer, he saved my life." Sergeant Carson leaned in slightly, eyes widening. "Sir, are you saying—" "I never got to thank him properly," Trump interrupted. "And now I need to find him, or his family." Chief Ruiz picked up the photo, studying it carefully. The officer's uniform was crisp, his expression filled with quiet pride. There was something noble about the way he stood, like a man devoted to his duty. She looked up. "Who was he, sir?" Trump exhaled, his expression unexpectedly vulnerable. "His name was Officer Daniel Brooks. When I was 17, I was in Las Vegas making reckless choices. One night, I nearly ruined my life. But this man, he stopped me. He didn't just arrest me, he talked to me, gave me advice I never forgot." Ruiz exchanged glances with Carson. This was not at all what they had expected. "You want us to find him, or his family?" Trump's gaze was steady. "I owe him everything." Leaning back in his chair, Trump let his mind drift to that fateful night. It was 1964. Just another teenager, trying to prove himself. His friends had dared him to do something reckless, something illegal. And like so many young men, he had let pride push him forward. But before he could cross the line, a firm hand landed on his shoulder. "Kid," a voice said. Strong. Understanding. "This ain't the path for you. You've got a future. Don't throw it away over a stupid mistake." Officer Daniel Brooks. Trump had listened, and it changed the course of his life. Now, staring at Ruiz, he said firmly, "I want to find him." "Or his family." I need to do right by him. Chief Ruiz nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the request. Sir, I appreciate this story, and I respect what you're trying to do. But this was a long time ago. Officer Brooks, he may not even be alive. Trump's jaw tightened. Then find his family. Someone deserves to hear this story. Someone should know that their father, their grandfather, changed a life. Ruiz glanced at Carson. He gave a small nod, already preparing himself for a deep dive into decades-old records. All right, Ruiz finally said. We'll do our best. Just know these things take time. I've got time, Trump replied. Just promise me you'll find them. Hours later, Sergeant Carson sat in front of an old police database, scrolling through dusty digital archives. Officer Daniel Brooks, a name lost in time. But Carson wasn't giving up. He searched arrest logs, patrol reports, even newspaper articles from the 1960s. It wasn't easy, but after hours of digging, there it was. A personnel file. Officer Daniel Brooks. Badge number 4523. Retired in 1985. Deceased in 2013. Carson exhaled, rubbing his temples. He didn't want to be the one to break the news to Trump that the man he was searching for was gone. But then, he noticed something in the file. Next of kin, Emma Brooks. He had found her. Carson rushed. Back in Chief Ruiz's office, Trump sat in silence, still staring at the old photograph. Carson hesitated before speaking. Sir, I have good news and bad news. Trump's eyes snapped up, sharp and focused. Give me the bad news first. Carson took a deep breath. Officer Daniel Brooks passed away 10 years ago. For the first time, Trump's expression truly fell. He swallowed hard. And the good news? Carson continued. He has a daughter, Emma Brooks. She still lives here in Las Vegas. Trump didn't hesitate. He rose to his feet. Then we find her. Now. Ruiz blinked, caught off guard. Sir, we don't even know if she... Trump cut her off. She deserves to know who her father was. Without another word, Trump, Carson, and a small security detail made their way through the quiet suburbs of Las Vegas, heading toward Emma Brooks' home. The ride was mostly silent, save for Carson sharing the little information he had found. Emma was in her 40s, working a regular job, living a modest life, completely unaware that her father had left an unforgettable mark on one of the most powerful men in the world. As they pulled up to the address, Trump took a deep breath. This wasn't about politics. No cameras. No speeches. Just a man honoring a promise. He knocked. A moment later, the door creaked open. Emma Brooks stood in the doorway, her expression puzzled. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she recognized him. Mr. President? She asked, her voice caught between shock and confusion. Trump gave a small nod. Emma Brooks. She hesitated, gripping the edge of the door. Yes. Slowly, Trump reached into his pocket, pulling out the worn photograph. He held it up for her to see. Your father saved my life when I was 17, he said. I never got to thank him. Emma's breath hitched. Her gaze flickered between the photo and Trump, her hands trembling. My dad. Officer Brooks. She shook her head in disbelief. This has to be a mistake. Trump's voice softened, carrying none of the usual bravado. It's not. He held her gaze. Your father changed my life, and I need to tell you how. Emma's lips quivered. She stepped back, pushing the door open wider. Come in. Inside, the home was simple, lived in, filled with framed memories on the walls. Trump sat, his hands still clutching the old photograph, while Emma stared at it, lost in thought. He was a good man, she whispered. The best, but no one ever remembered him like this. Trump nodded. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. He stopped me from making the worst mistake of my life. Emma swallowed hard. He gave everything to this city. But after he retired, we struggled. When he passed, no one came. No news. No honors. It was like he was just forgotten. Trump's jaw clenched. Not anymore. Emma's eyes welled up. Why now? Trump met her gaze, unwavering. Because some debts should never go unpaid. Emma hesitated before finally opening up. After Dad retired, we barely made ends meet. He never talked much about his work, but I knew how much he cared about people, about this city. But when he was gone, there was nothing left. No pension, no help. I had to sell our home just to survive. Trump's expression darkened. He had always respected law enforcement, but this? A man who had given his life to serve and protect, abandoned in his final years? Emma shook her head. I don't want pity, Mr. President. I just miss my dad.